The moment, Zara Lawson's rental car slid off the mountain road and slammed into a snowbank. She knew her carefully planned winter retreat had just become a nightmare. She sat there for a moment, hands trembling on the steering wheel, watching the snow fall so thick she couldn't see 3 feet ahead. The GPS had stopped working an hour ago. Her phone had no signal, and now her car was wedged so deep into the drift that when she tried to reverse, the wheels just spun uselessly. "Damn it," she whispered, her breath fogging in the rapidly cooling interior. She'd come to the mountains to escape, to find peace after the disaster that had been the last 6 months. Her job gone, her engagement ended when she discovered her fiancé in bed with her best friend, her apartment lease up. Everything had fallen apart at once, and she'd needed to disappear for a while. A week in a rented cabin in the Colorado mountains had seemed perfect. Instead, she was going to freeze to death. Zara forced herself to think. The engine was still running, but she couldn't stay here. Carbon monoxide, limited gas, the cold. She grabbed her phone even though she knew it was useless, stuffed it in her coat pocket and pushed the door open. The wind nearly ripped it from her hands. Snow immediately blasted into her face, stinging and brutal. She'd seen something about a quarter-mile back. Stone pillars, maybe a gate. She hadn't paid much attention because she'd been focused on the increasingly treacherous road, but it was the only structure she'd passed in miles. Zara started walking. The cold was immediate and vicious. Her boots sank into snow past her ankles with every step. The wind cut through her jacket like it was paper. She wrapped her arms around herself and kept moving, counting steps to keep herself focused. 100, 200. Her face went numb. Her fingers ached when she finally saw the pillars emerge from the white chaos. She nearly cried with relief. They were massive, hewn from dark stone, with an elaborate iron gate between them. The gate was closed, but there was a smaller door set into it. She grabbed the handle with stiff fingers and pulled. It opened. The driveway beyond curved up through bare trees. She couldn't see any building, but someone maintained this entrance, which meant someone had to be here. Zara stumbled forward, the wind slightly less brutal, with the trees providing some shelter. It took another 10 minutes before the estate materialized through the storm. Zara stopped, staring. It was enormous. A Gothic masterpiece of dark stone and soaring towers, with dozens of windows glowing warm gold against the snow. It looked like something transported from a European mountainside, utterly incongruous in the Colorado wilderness. Beautiful and slightly ominous. Right now, it looked like salvation. She forced her frozen legs to move faster, nearly running the last 100 yards to the massive front doors. They were carved wood, intricate and old. She found a doorbell and pressed it, then knocked for good measure, pounding with fists she could barely feel. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then one of the doors opened and warmth spilled out. A woman stood there, dressed in a severe black dress that looked like a uniform from another century. She was perhaps 50, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her face was expressionless as she looked at Zara. "Please," Zara managed through chattering teeth. "My car went off the road. I need help." The woman didn't speak. She simply stepped aside, gesturing for Zara to enter. Zara didn't hesitate. She stumbled into the entrance hall and nearly gasped. It was spectacular. Marble floors, a grand staircase curving up to the second floor, chandeliers dripping with crystal. Tapestries hung on the walls, and a fire crackled in a fireplace large enough to stand in. "Thank you," Zara said, turning to the woman. "Thank you so much. I'm sorry to intrude, but the storm. Is there a phone I could use? My cell doesn't have signal." The woman looked at her with dark, unreadable eyes. Then she turned and walked away, her footsteps silent on the marble despite her hard-soled shoes. Zara blinked. "Wait." The woman disappeared through a doorway. "Okay," Zara muttered. "That was weird." She stood there, dripping melting snow onto the floor, unsure what to do. Call out? Follow? She was settling on calling out when she heard footsteps on the stairs. She looked up and her breath caught. The man descending the staircase was the most striking person she'd ever seen. Tall and lean, moving with a grace that seemed almost inhuman. His hair was pure white, long enough to brush his shoulders, and his skin was equally pale, luminous in the firelight. He wore dark clothing that looked expensive and perfectly tailored. As he got closer, she saw his eyes were a deep crimson like garnets, beautiful, dangerous, utterly arresting. "You are trespassing." His voice was deep, accented with something she couldn't quite place. Old European, maybe. His expression was cold. Zara swallowed. "I'm sorry. My car went off the road in the storm. Your housekeeper let me in. I just need to use a phone, and then I'll call for help." "There are no phones here that will help you. The lines are down." He reached the bottom of the stairs and stopped, studying her with those unsettling red eyes. "The storm has closed the roads. No one will reach this estate for days." Her stomach dropped. "Days?" At minimum, we are quite isolated and this storm is worse than most. He tilted his head slightly. I am Konstantin Varga. This is my home, Zara Lawson. She tried for a smile, though her face was still half frozen. I'm really sorry to intrude like this. I was trying to reach a rental cabin further up the mountain. You will not reach it tonight, or for several nights. Konstantin continued to watch her with that unnerving intensity. It seems you are snowbound here. The way he said it sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. I don't want to impose, you have already imposed. The question now is what to do with you. He moved closer and she had to resist the urge to step back. There was something about him that set off every prey instinct in her body. I suppose you must stay. Leaving you to freeze would be inhospitable. That's very kind of you, Zara said carefully, his lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. I am rarely accused of kindness, but I am not wasteful, and letting you die on my doorstep would create complications. Before she could process that strange statement, he turned and said something in a language she didn't recognize. The woman who'd answered the door appeared as if she'd been waiting just out of sight. Konstantin spoke to her again in that other language, his tone commanding. The woman bowed her head and gestured for Zara to follow. Irina will show you to a room and provide suitable clothing, Konstantin said. You will join me for dinner in 2 hours. Do not wander. This house is large and I would hate for you to become lost. It didn't sound like concern for her safety. It sounded like a warning. Okay, Zara said. Thank you for letting me stay. He'd already turned away, moving toward another doorway with that same liquid grace. She watched him go, her heart beating faster than it should. Irina touched her elbow and gestured toward the stairs. Zara followed, trying to shake off the strange feeling that had settled over her. So Konstantin was eccentric. Rich people often were. The accent, the formal way of speaking, the Gothic mansion, maybe he was some kind of European aristocrat who'd relocated to America. That would explain the old-world atmosphere. It didn't explain his eyes, but colored contacts were a thing. Irina led her up the grand staircase, down a long hallway lined with more tapestries and oil paintings of stern-looking people in outdated clothing. The room she was shown to was enormous, dominated by a 4-poster bed hung with deep blue velvet curtains. A fire already burned in the fireplace. Heavy drapes were drawn across tall windows. Irina pointed to an adjoining bathroom, then to a wardrobe, then to Zara, clearly communicating that she should wash and change. Then the woman left without a word. Zara stood in the middle of the room, slowly processing. The housekeeper hadn't spoken a single word, not one. Even when Zara had asked questions, she'd only gestured or used expressions to communicate. Maybe she didn't speak English. But Konstantin clearly did, fluently. Zara shook her head and headed for the bathroom. She needed to get warm and dry, and then she could worry about the peculiarities of her unexpected host. The bathroom was as luxurious as the bedroom, all marble and gold fixtures. The hot shower was possibly the best thing Zara had ever experienced. She stood under the spray until her skin was pink and her fingers had finally stopped aching with cold. When she emerged, wrapped in a towel that was probably worth more than her entire wardrobe back home, she found that Irina had left clothing laid out on the bed. A dress. Of course it was a dress. It was beautiful, though. Deep green velvet, long-sleeved, with a fitted bodice and a skirt that would fall to her ankles. It looked vintage, or at least made to look vintage. There was delicate underwear, stockings, even shoes, soft leather slippers that somehow fit perfectly. Zara dressed slowly, feeling like she was putting on a costume. When she looked in the full-length mirror, she barely recognized herself. The dress fit like it had been made for her. With her dark hair still damp and curling around her shoulders, she looked like she belonged in this strange Gothic house. A knock on the door made her jump. She opened it to find Irina, who gestured for her to follow dinner. Right. The dining room was as grand as the rest of the house, a long table that could easily seat 20, set with silver and crystal, candles providing most of the light. Konstantin sat at the head of the table, still in dark clothing, his white hair gleaming in the candlelight. He stood when she entered. You look considerably less frozen, he observed. Come, sit. Zara took the seat to his right, the closest one to him. As soon as she sat, Irina appeared with food. Roasted meat, vegetables, bread that smelled divine. She set a plate in front of Zara, then placed a crystal goblet in front of Konstantin. The liquid in it was dark red wine, Zara assumed, though she was given water. Please eat, Konstantin said. You must be hungry. She was ravenous. The food was delicious and she tried not to eat too quickly while Konstantin watched her. He didn't eat anything, just sipped occasionally from his goblet. You're not eating? She asked finally. I have a restrictive diet. I already partook before you arrived. He leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. Tell me, Zara Lawson, what brings you to these mountains alone in winter? There was something about the way he said her name, with that accent curling around the syllables, that made her shiver. I needed to get away, she said honestly. My life kind of fell apart recently. I thought some time alone would help me figure things out. And instead you found yourself trapped in a stranger's home, better than frozen in a car. True. He studied her over the rim of his goblet. You are not afraid. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. Should I be? Most people find this house unsettling, and I am not what anyone would call welcoming. You let me in from the storm, you're feeding me and giving me a place to stay. That seems pretty welcoming. She took a sip of water. The house is a little Gothic, but it's beautiful. As for you, she paused, wondering if she should say it. You're a little intense, but I've dealt with worse. Something flickered in those red eyes. Have you? My ex-fiancé slept with my best friend in the bed I paid for, Zara said flatly. You'd have to work pretty hard to top that for making me uncomfortable. Konstantin was quiet for a moment. Then, to her surprise, he smiled. It was slight but genuine. Your ex-fiancé was a fool. The compliment, unexpected and delivered in that deep voice, made warmth bloom in her chest. They ate in silence for a while, or rather, she ate while he watched. It should have been awkward, but somehow it wasn't. There was something almost comfortable about his presence, despite the strangeness of the situation. Your housekeeper, Zara said eventually. Irina. She doesn't speak at all. Is she mute? Konstantin's expression didn't change. In a manner of speaking, what does that mean? It means you need not concern yourself with the servants. They will not bother you, and you should not bother them. It was a clear dismissal of the topic, delivered in a tone that didn't invite argument. But Zara had never been good at leaving well enough alone. How many servants do you have? Several, and none of them speak? They serve their purpose without need for speech. She frowned. That's a weird requirement for employment. I have exacting standards. He set down his goblet and leaned forward slightly. I understand you are curious. You are trapped in a strange place with a strange man, and your mind seeks to make sense of your situation. But some questions are better left unasked, Zara. The warning was clear, but his voice had softened slightly on her name. Okay, she said slowly. What can I ask about? Anything else? That slight smile returned. I am quite well versed in many subjects. I have lived a long time and traveled extensively. How old are you? Rude to ask, but I will allow it. Old enough that I have forgotten more history than you have learned. That's not an answer. It is the only answer you will receive. Zara ate more of her meal, thinking. There was something off about all of this. The isolated estate, the silent servants, Konstantin's strange way of speaking, and his even stranger appearance. Those eyes that couldn't possibly be natural, the way he moved, too smooth, too graceful. What do you do? She asked. For a living, I mean. I manage my family's holdings. We have been wealthy for a very long time. What kind of holdings? Various. Properties, businesses, investments. He waved a hand dismissively. Boring matters of finance and legacy. I prefer to discuss more interesting things. Like what? Like you. He tilted his head, studying her again with that intensity that made her feel like he could see right through her. You are running from your old life. What do you hope to find? I don't know yet, Zara admitted. Peace, maybe. A sense of direction. I feel like I've been living someone else's life, doing what I was supposed to do instead of what I wanted. I thought if I got away from everything, I could figure out who I actually am, a noble pursuit. Do you know yet? I've been here for like an hour, and yet sometimes clarity comes in a single moment. He leaned back again. I think you are stronger than you believe yourself to be. It takes courage to walk away from a familiar life, even a painful one. The compliment warmed her again, more than it should. There was something magnetic about Konstantin, something that drew her in despite all the warning signs she should probably be heeding. What about you? She asked. Are you running from anything? His expression went cold so fast it was like a door slamming. I am not running. I am simply existing in the manner I choose. Sorry, I didn't mean it is late. You should rest. He stood, the movement fluid and final. Irina will show you to your room. Tomorrow we will speak more. Zara stood as well, feeling like she'd touched a nerve she hadn't known was there. Thank you for dinner, and for everything. He inclined his head, already distant. Irina appeared in the doorway as if summoned, and Zara followed her back through the candlelit halls to the blue bedroom. Once alone, Zara changed into a nightgown that had been left on the bed, more antique finery, and climbed under the covers. The bed was absurdly comfortable, the fire warm, but she lay awake for a long time, staring at the canopy above her. Something was wrong here. Not necessarily dangerous, but definitely wrong. The silent servants, Konstantin's evasions, the way the entire house felt like it existed outside of normal time. But when she finally slept, it wasn't fear that kept her restless. It was the memory of crimson eyes and the way her name sounded in Konstantin's voice. The next morning, or what Zara assumed was morning, since the heavy curtains blocked all light, she found fresh clothing laid out again. More vintage-style pieces, this time a white blouse and a long burgundy skirt. She dressed and ventured out of her room, trying to remember the way to the dining room. The house was a maze. Every hallway looked the same, lined with dark wood paneling and those unsettling portraits. She turned a corner and found herself facing a closed door she didn't remember seeing before. Voices came from behind it, low and urgent. Zara knew she shouldn't eavesdrop, but the voices were speaking English, which meant one of them was probably Konstantin, and curiosity won out. She stepped closer. "Cannot keep her here." A male voice, younger than Konstantin's, with a similar accent. "The storm has trapped her. What would you have me do, throw her back into the snow?" That was definitely Konstantin. "She is human. She does not belong in this place. She is a guest. You will treat her as such. And when she discovers what we are, when she sees, she will see nothing. The servants know to be discreet. You and Lucien will also exercise restraint. This is foolish. You risk exposure for a mortal woman you do not even know. What I risk is my concern, Dmitri. You forget yourself." There was a long pause, then the younger voice, quieter. "I apologize, my lord. I merely worry for our safety. For yours especially. Your concern is noted. Now go. I will handle our guest." Zara quickly backed away from the door and hurried back the way she'd come. Her heart was racing. The conversation had been strange enough, but it was the specific words that echoed in her mind. Human. Mortal. What we are. She was being ridiculous, paranoid. There were plenty of explanations for that kind of language. Maybe Konstantin belonged to some kind of eccentric secret society. Maybe it was a language barrier thing, the words not translating quite right. Maybe she was trapped in a mansion with people who thought they weren't human. Zara forced herself to breathe slowly. She was letting the Gothic atmosphere get to her. She needed to find the dining room, have breakfast, and act normal. When she finally located it, Konstantin was already there, sitting in the same seat as last night. He stood when he saw her. "Good morning. I trust you slept well?" "Very well, thank you." She sat down, accepting the plate of food Irina brought. The housekeeper moved in complete silence, her expression blank. "The bed is incredibly comfortable. I believe in quality accommodations." He had the same crystal goblet in front of him, filled with dark red liquid. When he saw her looking, he raised it slightly. "A family recipe. Very specific dietary needs, as I mentioned." "Right." Zara focused on her breakfast. Eggs, fresh bread, fruit, all delicious. "I thought perhaps I could give you a tour of the house today," Konstantin said. "Since you will be here for several days, you should know your way around. Within reason? There are private areas that are off limits, my study, certain wings of the house. I value my privacy. Of course, I wouldn't dream of snooping." That slight smile. "Wouldn't you?" She felt her cheeks heat. "Okay, maybe I'm curious. But I'll respect your boundaries. I appreciate honesty." He sipped from his goblet, his eyes never leaving her face. "You are different from most people I encounter. More direct. I find it refreshing. I've been told I don't have a great filter. Filters are for those who fear the truth. I prefer candor." They fell into easy conversation over breakfast, discussing books and travel and music. Konstantin was incredibly well read, with opinions on literature spanning centuries. He referenced places Zara had only dreamed of visiting, like he'd been there personally. The way he spoke about Paris in the 1700s was so vivid she could almost see it. "Wait, the 1700s? You talk about history like you were there," she said lightly. "I have an excellent education and a vivid imagination." But something flickered in his expression. "Come, let me show you the house." The tour was fascinating. Room after room of antique furniture, priceless art, and architectural details that took her breath away. A library with floor-to-ceiling shelves, a ballroom with painted ceilings, a conservatory filled with plants that shouldn't be able to grow in Colorado winter. Konstantin was a knowledgeable guide, explaining the provenance of various pieces, though he never quite explained how he'd acquired them. They encountered two other people during the tour. Both were pale and white-haired like Konstantin, with the same unearthly beauty. One was a younger-looking man who Konstantin introduced as Dmitri. The other, older in appearance but equally striking, was Lucien. Both bowed to Konstantin with clear deference and regarded Zara with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. Neither spoke to her directly. "Your family?" Zara asked after they'd moved on. "In a sense. We share a bond that goes deeper than blood." More cryptic non-answers. But Zara was starting to notice a pattern. Konstantin deflected any question that would reveal concrete information about himself or his household. He was charming and attentive but utterly mysterious. That night at dinner, Zara decided to push. "Can I ask you something?" And will you give me a real answer? Konstantin raised an eyebrow. That depends on the question. Why do none of the servants speak? Not Irina, not the others I've seen. They don't say a word. He was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he sighed, a sound that seemed to carry centuries of weight. The servants do not speak because they cannot, he said finally. They are bound to this house, to their duties, to me. Speech was sacrificed as part of that binding. Zara stared at him. That's insane. How can I what? Bind people to service? His eyes flashed. I did not create their situation. I inherited it, along with this house and everything else my bloodline carries. The servants were bound long before I was born, and they will remain bound long after I am gone. But that's slavery. It is survival. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You do not understand. You cannot possibly understand. Then explain it to me. I cannot. His voice was hard now, all charm gone. There are things in this world you are better off not knowing, Zara. Leave it alone. Why? Because I'm human. The words slipped out before she could stop it. Konstantin went very still. What did you say? Zara's heart hammered, but she'd already started. I heard you talking to Dmitri about me being human, being mortal. What are you, if not human? The silence stretched out, taut as a wire. Konstantin stared at her with those crimson eyes, and for the first time she felt real fear. He could do anything to her here. No one knew where she was. The storm still raged outside. Then he moved, so fast she didn't see it, and suddenly he was standing right in front of her. She gasped, stumbling back against the table. You want the truth? His voice was low, dangerous. I am a vampire, Zara. I have lived for over 500 years. I drink blood to survive. I cannot walk in sunlight. I am stronger and faster than any human, and I could kill you with less effort than it takes to breathe. He leaned in, close enough that she could feel the coolness radiating from his skin. Is that the answer you wanted? Zara couldn't speak, couldn't move. Her brain was trying to process what he'd said, to make it make sense, but it was impossible. Vampires weren't real. They were stories, myths. But she looked at his white skin, white hair, red eyes. The way he moved, the way he never ate food. The dark liquid in his goblet, oh God. You're insane, she whispered. Konstantin pulled back, his expression going cold and distant. Perhaps you are trapped in a house with a monster. He turned and walked toward the door. I will have Irina take you to your room. I suggest you stay there until I have calmed myself. Wait. But he was gone, moving with that impossible speed. Zara sank into her chair, her legs shaking. Irina appeared in the doorway, expressionless as always, and gestured for her to follow. Zara went, too shocked to argue. Back in her room, she locked the door and sat on the bed trying to think. Konstantin had just told her he was a vampire, an actual vampire, and he'd said it like he expected her to believe it. The rational part of her brain insisted this was crazy, delusional. Maybe she'd hit her head in the car crash and this was all a hallucination. But the evidence was mounting. The way Konstantin and the others looked. The servants who couldn't speak bound, he'd said. The Gothic mansion, the isolated location, the fact that she'd never seen any of them during actual daylight. What if it was true? Zara stood and went to the window, pulling back the heavy curtain. Snow still fell in thick sheets, visibility near zero. She couldn't leave even if she wanted to. And if Konstantin was what he claimed, trying to run would be pointless. He'd catch her in seconds. She was trapped here for days, with vampires. Terror should have overwhelmed her. Instead, after the initial shock, what she felt was confusion. Because if Konstantin wanted to hurt her, he'd had plenty of opportunities. He'd been nothing but courteous, even kind. He'd sheltered her, fed her, talked to her like an equal. If he was a monster, he was the strangest monster she'd ever heard of. Zara spent a restless night, jumping at every sound, but nothing disturbed her. When she finally slept, she dreamed of crimson eyes and hands cold as marble. Morning came, or what passed for morning, in the perpetual dimness of the curtained room. Zara dressed in the clothing left for her, a deep blue dress this time, and steeled herself. She needed answers. Real ones. Konstantin was in the library, standing by the window with his back to her. He didn't turn when she entered, but he spoke. You did not flee. Where would I go? The storm is still raging. You could have tried. Humans often act irrationally when frightened. I'm not frightened. It was mostly true. Now he turned, studying her. No, I told you I was a vampire. A predator, and you were not afraid? Zara crossed her arms. I'm processing. There's a difference. She moved closer, keeping the large reading table between them. You said vampires are real. Prove it. I already did. My speed could be a trick. I was startled. Show me something that can't be faked. Konstantin tilted his head, something like amusement crossing his face. You are either very brave or very foolish. I've been called both. She held his gaze. Prove it. He moved then, that inhuman speed again, and was suddenly standing on the opposite side of the table. Before she could react, he reached out and picked up a heavy bronze sculpture. It had to weigh at least 50 pounds, and lifted it with one hand like it was made of paper. He held it out to her. Zara took it and nearly dropped it. It was genuinely heavy. "Strength," Konstantin said. He took the sculpture back and set it down, then held up his hand. As she watched, his fingernails elongated into sharp claw-like points. "Natural weapons," the nails retracted. "Would you like me to demonstrate my fangs as well? I believe you." Her heart was racing, but not entirely with fear. This was impossible, but it was happening. "You are taking this remarkably well. I'm good in a crisis." Zara sat down in one of the leather chairs, her legs suddenly weak. "So, vampires are real. You're a vampire. The others, Dimitri and Lucien? Also vampires. This estate houses several of my kind. And the servants?" His expression darkened. "That is more complicated. Explain it to me, please." She looked up at him. "You said they were bound. What does that mean?" Konstantin was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat down across from her, his movements controlled and graceful. "Long ago my ancestors discovered a ritual, a way to bind human servants to our households. The binding ensures loyalty, silence, and eternal service. The servants cannot speak because their voices were taken as part of the spell. They cannot leave, cannot disobey, cannot reveal what they know." Horror crept through Zara's chest. "That's monstrous." "Yes." He met her eyes steadily. "It is. I did not create this system. It was in place long before I inherited this estate. The servants you see were bound by my grandfather over a century ago. Why haven't you freed them? The binding cannot be broken without killing them. Their lives are sustained by the magic that enslaves them. If I were to attempt to free them, they would age all at once and die." Zara stared at him. "So they're trapped forever until they are released by death?" "Yes." Pain flickered across his face. "It is an abomination, one I have refused to perpetuate. I will not bind new servants. When these pass, the practice dies with them. But they're still prisoners, they are. And I am their jailer, no matter how gentle I try to make their captivity." He leaned back, looking suddenly weary. "This is why I warned you. Some truths are heavy burdens to carry." Zara tried to process this. Vampires were real. Magic was real. And she was trapped in a house where people were bound into slavery by dark rituals. "Why did you tell me?" she asked quietly. "Because you asked? Because you deserved the truth after I frightened you last night." He studied her with those unsettling red eyes. "And because there is something about you that makes me want to be honest." Her breath caught at the intensity in his gaze. "I should be terrified of you," she said. "Yes, you should, but I'm not really." She shook her head. "Maybe I'm crazy. Or perhaps you see what others do not." Konstantin stood and held out his hand. "Come, I want to show you something." Zara hesitated only a moment before taking his hand. His skin was cool but not unpleasant. He led her through the house, down corridors she hadn't seen on yesterday's tour, until they reached a heavy wooden door. He opened it to reveal a stone staircase leading down. "This is my private sanctuary," he said. "No one else is permitted here, but I think you should see it." They descended into what looked like a wine cellar, but instead of bottles, the walls were lined with books and artwork and strange artifacts. In the center was a sitting area with comfortable furniture and more of those omnipresent candles. "When the weight of eternity becomes too much, I come here," Konstantin said quietly, "to remember what I have been, what I have seen, what I have lost." Zara looked around at the collection. Each item seemed to have a story. "You've lived 500 years? 532 to be precise. I was turned in 1494, in the region that is now Romania. That's..." She couldn't even comprehend that much time. "What's it like, living that long lonely?" The word was simple but heavy with meaning. "Everyone you know dies. Everything you build crumbles. The world changes and you remain the same, a relic of ages past." He picked up a small painting from one of the shelves. "This is my sister. She died of plague in 1520. I could not save her." The woman in the painting looked like Konstantin, pale, beautiful, with light hair and delicate features. She was smiling. "I'm sorry," Zara said softly. "It was a long time ago. But I still miss her." He set the painting down carefully. "I have watched centuries pass, Zara. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have loved and lost more times than I care to count. And through it all I remain, unchanging, undying. Is that why you're here? In isolation?" "Partially. It is easier to exist away from the mortal world. Less complicated, less painful." He turned to face her. "But it is also exile in a way. I am a king among my kind, yet I rule over an empty kingdom." "A king?" "The vampire king of the Western Territory. It is a title more than a position of true power. There are few of us left and we keep to ourselves." Zara sat down on one of the chairs, trying to absorb everything. "Why are you telling me all of this?" Konstantin moved closer, standing in front of her. When he spoke, his voice was low and intense. "Because in 500 years I have never met anyone quite like you. You crashed into my world by accident, but now that you are here I find I do not want you to see me as a monster, even though I am one." Her heart was pounding. "I am a vampire. I drink blood to survive. I have killed to feed, or for pleasure." He paused. "To feed. Only to feed. I take only what I need and I ensure my donors survive." "Then you're a predator but not a monster. There's a difference." She stood, bringing them close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "A monster wouldn't care about servants he can't free. A monster wouldn't isolate himself to avoid hurting others. A monster wouldn't look at me the way you're looking at me right now. And how am I looking at you? Like I matter." The air between them felt charged, electric. Konstantin raised one hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her cheek. His touch was cool and gentle. "You do matter," he said quietly. "More than you should. I have known you barely 2 days. Yet I find myself drawn to you in ways I have not experienced in decades." Zara's breath hitched. "Konstantin," the door at the top of the stairs burst open. Dimitri's voice called down urgently in that other language. Konstantin responded sharply, his hand dropping from Zara's face. His expression had gone hard and alert. "What is it?" Zara asked. "Hunters. They have found the estate." Her blood ran cold. "Hunters? What vampire hunters? They must have tracked us through the storm." He was already moving, pulling her toward the stairs. "You need to stay in your room, lock the door, and do not come out until I come for you." "But now, Zara, this is not a request." The command in his voice brooked no argument. They reached the top of the stairs where Dimitri waited, looking tense. He said something to Konstantin in rapid-fire Romanian at least. Zara thought it was Romanian. Konstantin replied in kind, then turned to her. "Go, please." Zara ran. She made it back to her room and locked the door, her heart hammering. Vampire hunters. That was apparently a thing that existed. Of course it was. If vampires were real, it made sense that people would hunt them. Were they in danger? Was she in danger? Time crawled. Zara paced the room, straining to hear anything. Once she thought she heard shouting. Then a crash like breaking glass. She pressed her ear to the door but couldn't make out anything specific. It was agony, not knowing what was happening. Finally, after what felt like hours, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Then Konstantin's voice, low and controlled. "Zara, it is safe. You may open the door." She unlocked it and pulled it open. Konstantin stood there, looking disheveled in a way she hadn't seen before. His hair was loose, his shirt torn at the shoulder. There was blood on his hands. "Are you hurt?" She grabbed his arm, examining him. "Not my blood." He let her fuss over him for a moment, something like wonder crossing his face. "You were worried for me." "Of course I was worried. What happened?" "The hunters have been dealt with. They will not trouble us again." Zara's stomach clenched. "Did you kill them?" "No. But I made it very clear that this territory is claimed and defended. They have withdrawn." He covered her hand with his cold fingers, gentle on her warm skin. "You were frightened. I was terrified. For you, for me?" He stepped closer. "Zara, I am a vampire. I have survived 5 centuries of conflicts and wars. A handful of hunters pose little threat. I don't care. I don't want you hurt." They stood there in the doorway, hands clasped, staring at each other. Zara could feel the pull between them, magnetic and undeniable. It should be impossible. She'd known him only days. He was a vampire, an immortal predator, completely inhuman. But when he looked at her like that, like she was something precious and rare, none of it seemed to matter. "I need to clean up," Konstantin said quietly. "Will you join me for dinner in an hour?" "Yes." He raised her hand to his lips and pressed a cool kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was old-fashioned and utterly charming. Then he was gone, moving down the hallway with that supernatural grace. Zara closed the door and leaned against it, her hand tingling where he'd kissed it. She was falling for him. A vampire, the vampire king. It was insane. It was also undeniable. Dinner that night was different. The tension between them had shifted from wary curiosity to something heated and aware. Konstantin watched her across the table with open hunger, though whether it was for blood or something else, Zara wasn't entirely sure. "Tell me about your life," he said. "Before you came here, what did you do?" "I was an art curator at a museum. Small, nothing prestigious, but I loved it." She smiled sadly. "Lost the job in budget cut 6 months ago. That was the start of everything falling apart." "You loved art?" "I love beauty, history, the stories that objects carry." She gestured around them. "This house is full of stories. Every painting, every piece of furniture. I keep wanting to ask you about all of it." Konstantin's expression softened. "Ask. I would be happy to tell you." So she did. They spent hours talking about the various pieces he'd collected over the centuries. He told her about acquiring a particular painting in Venice in the 1600s, about finding a statue in the ruins of an Ottoman palace, about a tapestry gifted to him by a French duchess who'd been a dear friend. His entire long life unfolded in artifacts and memories. and Zara was entranced. "You've lived such an incredible life," she said finally. "Seen so much I can't even imagine. It has been long, not always incredible." He stood and held out his hand. "Walk with me?" They strolled through the house together, Konstantin pointing out pieces and telling their stories. Eventually they ended up in the conservatory, surrounded by green growing things and the sound of the storm beyond the glass walls. "I have a confession," Konstantin said, stopping near a fountain in the center of the room. "I am glad the storm trapped you here." Zara's pulse quickened. "Why? Because I have been alone for so long, and you make me remember what it is to feel alive, even though I am not." He turned to face her fully. "You should leave as soon as the road's clear. Forget this place. Forget me. Return to your world. What if I don't want to? You do not know what you are saying." "Don't I?" She moved closer. "You're right that I barely know you, that this is crazy. But I've spent the last 6 months in a life that made perfect sense and made me completely miserable. You're a vampire living in a Gothic mansion. And somehow I feel more like myself here than I have in years." Konstantin's eyes blazed. "If you stay, I will not be able to resist you. Maybe I don't want you to resist." He closed the distance between them in a heartbeat, his hands framing her face. "Zara, I am trying to be honorable, to protect you." "From what? You've never hurt me. You've been nothing but kind. From this." And he kissed her. It was like being struck by lightning. His lips were cool against hers, his touch gentle despite the obvious restraint in his body. Zara made a soft sound and leaned into him, her hands fisting in his shirt. The kiss deepened and she felt his control waver. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, well, she was breathing hard. He didn't seem to need to breathe. Konstantin pressed his forehead to hers. "I have dreamed of doing that since the moment you walked into my house, covered in snow and looking lost." "I'm still lost," Zara whispered. "But maybe I was supposed to find you. I do not believe in fate. Maybe you should start." He kissed her again, and this time there was less restraint. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back. She felt the press of fangs against her lower lip and gasped. Konstantin pulled back immediately. "I am sorry. I did not mean. It's okay." She touched his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. "You won't hurt me. You cannot know that." "Yes, I can, because you care about me. I can see it." Konstantin closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. "I do. More than is wise. More than I should after such a short time. Then we're both fools. A fool and a monster. We make quite a pair. Stop calling yourself that." She pulled his face down to hers, holding his gaze. "You are not a monster, Konstantin Varga. You are lonely and ancient and kind, and I am falling in love with you." He went very still. "You cannot mean that." "I do, Zara. I am a vampire. I will never age. I will never die. You will grow old and I will remain exactly as I am now. To love me is to choose a future of inevitable loss. Maybe. Or maybe you could turn me." The words hung in the air between them. Konstantin stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "You do not know what you are suggesting." "Don't I? You said you were turned. That means it's possible." She held his gaze steadily. "I don't have anything waiting for me out there. No job, no home, no one who cares if I live or die. But here with you I feel alive for the first time in years. If that means becoming a vampire, then maybe that's what I'm meant to be." It is not that simple. The turning is agonizing. Many do not survive. And immortality is not the gift you think it is. "I'm not asking you to turn me tonight. I'm just saying it's an option. A possibility." She cupped his face in both hands. "I'm saying I'm not afraid of what you are, and I don't want to leave when the storm ends." Konstantin searched her eyes for a long moment. Then he pulled her against him, holding her so tight it almost hurt. "You terrify me," he whispered against her hair. "In 500 years nothing has terrified me like the thought of caring for you and watching you slip away." "Then don't watch me slip away. Keep me." "You do not know what you ask. I know exactly what I'm asking." She pulled back to look at him. "I'm asking for a chance for both of us." He kissed her again, and this time it was desperate, almost fierce. Zara kissed him back with everything she had, pouring all her unexpected feelings into it. When they finally broke apart, Konstantin rested his forehead against hers. "The storm will last 2 more days," he said quietly. "Stay that long. Get to know me, truly know me, and the life I lead. Then decide, okay. If you still wish it, we will discuss the possibility of turning you. But Zara, you must be certain. This is not a choice you can unmake." "I understand." They stayed in the conservatory for hours, talking and kissing and simply being together. Konstantin told her more about his long life, the good and the bad. She told him about her dreams, her fears, her hopes for a future she'd thought was lost. By the time they parted for the night, Zara's decision was already made. The next 2 days passed in a strange, beautiful blur. Konstantin showed her everything, the reality of his existence, the difficulties and the wonders. He introduced her properly to Dmitri and Lucien, who were wary but polite. He let her speak with the servants through gestures and written notes, and she learned that while they were bound, they were not mistreated. They seemed content, in their way, though the tragedy of their situation still ached. He showed her how he fed, taking blood from willing donors among the nearby town humans who knew what he was and accepted it in exchange for payment and the euphoric high that vampire bites apparently produced. It was transactional but not cruel. "I have not killed to feed in over a century," he told her. "I will not be that kind of monster." "You're not a monster at all," she said firmly. Each night they had dinner together, talking until the early hours of morning. Each night ended with kisses that grew more heated, though Konstantin always maintained careful control. Zara could feel the want radiating from him, matched by her own, but he refused to take things further. "Not until you have decided," he said. "Not until you are certain." On the morning of the third day, Irina gestured to the window. Zara pulled back the curtain and saw blue sky. The storm had broken, her time was up. She found Konstantin in the library, staring out at the snow-covered grounds. He turned when she entered, his expression carefully neutral. "The roads will be clear by tomorrow," he said. "You could leave then." Zara walked up to him and took his hands. "Turn me." "Zara, I'm certain. I've never been more certain of anything." She held his gaze. "I don't want to go back to my old life. I want to stay here with you. I want forever. You will lose everything. Your humanity, your mortality, your place in the sun. I'll gain everything that matters. You, time. A purpose." She squeezed his hands. "Please, I'm not afraid." Konstantin closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were bright with emotion, hope, and fear, and desperate want. "If I do this, you are mine. For eternity, I'm already yours." He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear. "I will make you happy. I swear it. I know." The turning happened that night in Konstantin's private chambers. He explained the process carefully, making sure she understood. His blood, then her near death, then his blood again. 3 days of agony as her body transformed. He would stay with her through all of it. Zara lay back on his bed, looking up at the vampire who had somehow become everything to her in less than a week. "I love you," she said. Konstantin's expression crumpled, centuries of loneliness and longing written across his face. "I love you, my Zara, my unexpected gift." He bit his wrist and held it to her lips. The blood tasted strange, copper and cold, and something electric. She drank as he'd instructed, feeling warmth spread through her body. Then he struck, his fangs sinking into her throat. The pain was sharp but brief, followed by a euphoria so intense she gasped. She could feel her life draining away, could feel herself slipping toward darkness. Just before she would have died, Konstantin pulled back and fed her his blood again. This time it burned, setting every nerve on fire. "Stay with me," Konstantin whispered, holding her as the pain began. "I am here. I will not leave you." The agony was beyond anything Zara could have imagined. Her body felt like it was tearing apart and rebuilding itself at the cellular level. She screamed until her voice gave out, writhed until Konstantin had to hold her down to keep her from hurting herself. Through it all he stayed, talking to her, stroking her hair, promising her it would end. His presence was the only thing that kept her sane. 3 days and nights passed in torment. And then suddenly it was over. Zara opened her eyes and the world was different, sharper, brighter. She could hear conversations happening rooms away, could smell individual scents she'd never noticed before, could see in perfect detail despite the darkness of the curtained room. And she felt strong, powerful, alive in a way she'd never experienced. Konstantin's face swam into focus above her, his expression anxious. "Zara, can you hear me?" She reached up and touched his face, marveling at the coolness of his skin that now matched her own. "I can hear you. I can hear everything." Relief flooded his features. "It worked. You survived." "Of course I did. You were here." She sat up, moving with a grace and ease that felt new and strange. Looking down at her hands, she saw they were pale now, bloodless, like his. "I'm a vampire. You are." He helped her stand, steadying her when she swayed. "How do you feel?" "Hungry." The word came out almost as a growl. She could smell blood, could hear heartbeats from somewhere in the house, the servants. The need was immediate and overwhelming. "I know. I will teach you control. I will teach you everything." Konstantin pulled her against him. "You are mine now, my companion, my love, for eternity." Zara looked up at him, her new vampire senses picking up every detail of his face, every flicker of emotion in those crimson eyes that now matched her own. "For eternity," she agreed, and kissed him. This time there was no restraint. Konstantin kissed her back with all the passion he'd been holding in check, his hands roaming over her body. Zara responded with equal fervor, pulling at his clothing, needing to be closer. They made love there in his chambers, two immortals discovering each other with all the time in the world. Afterward, lying tangled together, Konstantin traced patterns on her pale skin. I never thought I would have this again, he said quietly. Love, companionship, someone to share the centuries with. You'll never be alone again, Zara promised. I'm here always. Over the following weeks, Konstantin taught her everything: how to feed without killing, how to use her new strength and speed, how to navigate vampire society and the careful politics of their kind. Dmitri and Lucien accepted her presence, eventually warming to her as they saw how happy she made their king. The servants remained silent, but Zara learned to read their gestures and expressions. She learned their names through written notes: Irina, Marcus, Elena, Thomas. She learned their stories, or what they could tell her of them, and she promised herself that she would find a way to free them, somehow, without killing them. It became her purpose. Konstantin supported her quest, helping her research ancient texts and forgotten spells. It might take decades or centuries, but they had time. All the time in the world. 6 months after her turning, as spring approached, Zara stood in the conservatory looking out at the melting snow. Konstantin came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Regrets? He asked softly. Not a single one. She leaned back against him. My car crashed in a snowstorm and I thought my life was over. Instead, it was just beginning. You saved me, Konstantin said. I was existing, not living, going through the motions of immortality without any real purpose. Then you appeared, covered in snow and full of questions, and everything changed. Zara turned in his arms to face him. We saved each other, yes. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. My love, my life, my everything. Forever, Zara whispered. Forever, he agreed. Outside, the last of the winter snow melted away, revealing the first green shoots of spring. Inside the Gothic estate, 2 vampires stood together, holding each other. Surrounded by silent servants and centuries of history, the servants would speak again someday. Zara would make sure of it. She would find the answer, unlock the binding, give them back their voices and their freedom. But that was a quest for tomorrow, and all the tomorrows after. Right now, in this moment, she had everything she needed. She had found home in the last place she'd expected, in the arms of the Vampire King, in a house full of secrets, in an immortal life that stretched out before her, full of possibility. The storm that had trapped her here had been the best thing that ever happened to her. It had brought her to Konstantin, to love, to a future she never could have imagined. And as he held her close, his cool lips pressed to her temple, Zara knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. This was where she belonged. This was who she was meant to be. Forever started now. Years passed in the Gothic estate on the mountain. Zara grew into her vampiric nature, becoming as graceful and powerful as Konstantin himself. Together they ruled their small territory with wisdom and compassion, earning the respect of the other vampire lords. And she never stopped researching the binding spell. It took 43 years, but finally, in a crumbling monastery in the Carpathian Mountains, Zara found it. An ancient counterspell, written by a remorseful mage who had created the binding ritual and then sought to undo his mistake. The night they freed the servants was one of chaos and wonder. As the spell broke, 7 vampires stood in the great hall: Konstantin, Zara, Dmitri, Lucien, and 3 others who had joined their household. The servants knelt in a circle between them. Zara spoke the words carefully, feeling the magic flow through her. The air shimmered, and then she heard it. Thank you. Irina's voice, rough from decades of disuse, speaking for the first time in over a century. One by one, the servants spoke. Some cried, some laughed. All expressed gratitude so profound it brought tears to Zara's eyes, something she hadn't known vampires could do. You are free, Konstantin told them. Free to stay or go as you choose. If you stay, it will be as paid staff, with full rights and freedom. If you go, you will leave with enough money to start new lives. In the end, most chose to stay. The estate was their home, and Konstantin and Zara were the family they'd found. But they stayed as free people, their voices restored, their chains broken. That night, Zara and Konstantin stood on the balcony of their chambers, looking out at the starlit mountains. You did it, Konstantin said, his voice full of pride and love. You freed them. We did it together. Zara leaned into him. Everything is together now. For eternity. She smiled, fangs gleaming in the moonlight. For eternity. Below them in the kitchens, Irina sang as she worked an old Romanian lullaby from her childhood, her voice sweet and clear after so many years of silence. The sound drifted up to them, a symbol of everything they'd accomplished. Zara had come to this estate lost and broken, seeking shelter from a storm. She'd discovered vampires were real, fallen in love with their king, and chosen immortality. She'd discovered why the servants never spoke, and she'd given them back their voices. She'd found her purpose, her place, her forever. And as Konstantin pulled her into a kiss, the stars wheeling overhead in their eternal dance, Zara knew that every moment of the journey had been worth it. The storm had brought her here. Love had made her stay. And now, with all of eternity stretching before them, she and Konstantin would face it together. Two vampires, once alone, now forever joined. The Gothic estate stood strong on its mountain, no longer a prison but a home. A place of love and freedom, where a king and his queen ruled with compassion, where servants sang with reclaimed voices, where the past was honored and the future was bright. Zara's old life was a distant memory, belonging to someone she barely remembered being. That woman had been afraid, lost, adrift. This woman, this vampire, this queen, this beloved of the vampire king knew exactly who she was, and she had forever to enjoy it. The end came not as an ending but as a beginning, as all the best love stories do. Konstantin and Zara's story would continue for centuries more, full of adventures and challenges and quiet moments of peace. They would face vampire politics and human threats. They would travel the world and return always to their mountain home. They would love each other through it all, their bond growing stronger with each passing year. But that night, standing under the stars with Konstantin's arms around her and Irina's song floating on the breeze, Zara was perfectly content. She had everything she needed. She had everything she'd never known she wanted. She had come home at last, and home would last forever.